I think that maybe there's some people out there that are under the impression that steroids are going to add like 20 to 30 pounds to their frame. And sometimes it can. If somebody's really getting after it, if somebody's really training really hard, they got all their meals intact, it might yield that much weight gain, depending on how much the person weighs, because it's probably going to represent an overall percentage of your body weight that you're going to be able to gain. In my own experience, I recall gaining probably about 15 pounds fairly quickly. I mean, in comparison to like the years it takes to put on 15 pounds of muscle. When you first start training, maybe you could say it might only took you a year or 2 years to gain 15. But once that year of hard work's already
those
put
newbie
in,
gains.
yeah, you don't get that. You don't get a second or third burst of that unless you take something. But I like to point this out because it's not going to turn you into being so much bigger to the point where you're going to have a lot of health concerns.
Yeah.
Now, again, if you go off the rails and you take your own dosages and you start taking a lot of stuff and you start to bring in other factors, then your blood pressure is going to go through the roof. Then your red blood cell count is going to be high. Now you have high blood pressure. Your resting heart rate's probably not good. It's probably jacked. So your heart rate's going pretty fast all the time. You have thick blood that's trying to be pushed around in a body that has high blood pressure. Yeah. And I believe that that's where a lot of these recent deaths have happened with bodybuilders. It's not necessarily just the stuff that they're taking, but it's the fact that the combination of all the things that they took made them so large. And then also they're taking clenbuterol and things like that kind of speed up your heart rate, pre-workout type stuff, caffeine and all these other things. Meanwhile, their blood pressure is really high because they're 60 or 70 pounds heavier than normal, than what their normal body weight would be. And
they're literally like an obese person, just muscle, which is actually more metabolically active, has more vascularity, so puts more strain on the heart than even fat would. So yeah.
Right. And anything is possible. So I don't like to say that something's impossible, but it would be near impossible for you to gain that amount of size with like a TRT dosage, or I mean, you're pointing out like testosterone replacement.
Yes.
Like you might only notice a 5 or 6 pound, which is huge. You might gain 5 pounds of muscle. You might lose 2 or 3 pounds of fat because your metabolism might be increased because you now have a little bit more muscle mass. Yeah. That'll look really awesome on a lot of people. Just that small little manipulation. But in my opinion, you wouldn't be putting yourself at any risk in terms of health concerns. It's only when you go into the astronomical amounts and you're really pushing and you're trying to gain a tremendous amount of body weight.
Yeah, I would agree. There are, for some reason, it's interesting because it does seem that when we dose with exogenous testosterone, we do ramp up that blood cell production a little bit more than just natural testosterone would. And I don't know if that's really ever been studied as to why. I know that it does promote the erythropoiesis, it's a hard word to say, the creation of new red blood cells.
EPO.
Yeah. Right. So it ramps that up a bit, but why it does more than like endogenous or our natural testosterone is interesting. I don't know why the difference is, but it does seem to. So you can run into that. But like that study showed, it likely isn't going to increase cardiovascular disease. You're right. It's everything else. It's the massive, like they're pushing down on that hammer as far as how many androgens they're running and all the other compounds. So their body's under this massive amount of oxidative stress. The workouts too, like training the way that a lot of these guys do isn't really the healthiest. Either like getting under like what you did probably really wasn't that healthy for you.
Might not have been a good idea.
Yeah. When you're looking at longevity, now did you have fun and stuff? Yeah, that's a different story. But yeah, that's probably not great. And then just walking around with all that mass and everything too. Yeah.
Power Project family, how's it going? I want to talk to you guys about the best gym fits in the game. You need to head over to Vuori. People don't know how to say it. People don't know how to spell it. Vuori. But let me tell you something about Vuori. They have great clothes that you can wear outside the gym, weddings, lunches, dates. And then they have great pieces of equipment you can wear in the gym that make you look good while you're lifting. Because I know there's still a lot of y'all who are still rocking and one shorts. And although I have nothing against and one,
gets me every time.
I have nothing against and one shorts.
Yeah.
Honestly, it looks horrible. So Andrew, please tell the people how to step up their damn clothing game.
For reals, you guys got to step up. Head over to vuori.com/power project. That's VUORI.com/power project to receive 20% off your order. No code needed. You guys will see a discount will be applied at checkout, banner across the top. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes.
And then a lot of times, unfortunately, like big in the 90s and things, guys got really hooked onto other drugs and things. They were doing all the opiates and stuff just to be able to get through the training. So there were so many other confounding factors. But yeah, the TRT, it literally is a replacement. I explain it as like vitamin D is a hormone too. When you have low vitamin D, we replace that and get that back to normal. That's basically what we're doing with testosterone. We're not trying to tip the scales into the growth phase, really. We're just trying to replace it so that you get some of the benefits from it. And some of that is cardiovascular protection, actually, because it's great for the heart and stuff. Like having too low of testosterone is just as bad as having too high of testosterone. So they kind of have that nice little window where things are optimized, and that's what we're aiming for. We don't want you too low. We don't want you too high.
Yeah. Mark's been doing a lot of running, like miles and miles a week.
Crazy.
And when it comes to some of these athletes who do take tests or who do take extra stuff to get bigger, do you think that it would probably be, most people think it's bad for the gains, but it would probably be a good idea to do something that would allow them to increase their cardiovascular capacity?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
you see Kai Green still fucking doing the step mill all the time. And I wonder if like a lot of these individuals who choose to do bodybuilding, whether it's someone young who's just trying to gain as much muscle as possible or an IFBB person, if they really spent time each week doing cardio, but challenging cardio that actually increases their aerobic capacity, do you think that could be something that tips the scales back to being healthy, even though it might take away from a little bit of muscle gain?
Yeah, I would even argue that it probably wouldn't even take away from gains. And I think a lot of the pros these days kind of realize that. In fact, a lot of them keep cardio in the off season first, probably because they're seeing all their friends drop dead, unfortunately. And second, though, a lot of them will say it increases their hunger and it helps them get more food in. And so, there's benefits to it. And I think most of the top bodybuilding pros are doing some bit of cardio in the off season right now, which is good.
Maybe some nutrient partitioning, like the nutrients going to the right places rather than like just being stored as body fat.
Exactly.
Or something like that.
Yeah. And then, but there's so many other things that have just recently started to be talked about. Like before, it was people didn't even think about blood pressure medications or diabetes medications and things other than the insulin, like post-workout. But like these things are I think that if you're going to venture into like the performance enhancing drugs, some of the first things you should get online is like an antihypertensive drug, like an ARB, an angiotensin 2 receptor blocker, and probably something to help you with your glucose disposal, like a metformin or maybe a basal insulin like Atlantis or something. If you're going to be pushing into those, like we used to just focus on the drugs, the bodybuilding, like the anabolic things. We left out all the other, benefits that we could get out of pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
And so we probably could have saved some lives if these guys would have just been on like a blood pressure medication, and they would have saved their kidneys and everything else.
What you got over there, Andrew? You're brewing up some questions I can see.
Yeah, no, I was curious because you had mentioned that like at Marek, like the pharmaceutical stuff, that's like going to be towards the end. Like you're not going to go up to Marek and that's the first thing you're going to get. But in like what case would somebody get prescribed testosterone? Because you had just mentioned a bunch of different testosterone levels, and I'm thinking in my head like well shit, I think mine was at a 400. So like does that mean that I wouldn't get testosterone if I went, even though I had X, Y, and Z symptoms? Yeah,
we've literally prescribed to guys with like a double-digit testosterone, and then we've prescribed to guys that even have like a 600 testosterone. So that's one nice thing is we really focus on that subjective, on the individual, how they feel. Because we do have guys that sometimes they have that 600 testosterone, which most people would be like, that's a great testosterone, but they have all of the other symptoms. Their libido's terrible. They don't have good motivation. They're not making gains. They're putting on fat. Everything else in their life is dialed in. Then we take a kind of outside the box approach, and we're like, let's try this, and a lot of times that can help. And what's to say, like, this guy's 50 now, it's the first time he's ever had his testosterone tested. What if he was one of those guys that operated his whole life at a 1200? And so now he's taking 100% or a 50% less than so. Yeah. So we kind of give it to basically everyone. It's very individual. We don't have an algorithm that says like, you don't get it until this number, or you do get it, because we do give it. So sometimes people come in 300, they feel great. Cool. Let's not even talk about testosterone. Other times everything else is dialed in. I have a 900. Okay. Let's start seeing what we can do on the test,
Nice.
Yeah.
So, Power Project family, I hope you enjoyed this clip. We are on Discord and Reddit. We're trying to talk to you guys and build a community down there. So the links are in the bio. But remember, like, comment, subscribe, share this out with people so you can share the wealth of health. As cheesy as that fucking sounds. Peace.